to this week's edition of the Cats Whiskers TV podcast. My name is Jono Bullard. Andy and Aaron will be joining me shortly to look back at Panthers' disappointing weekend. We'll also be looking at Nathan Robinson signing for the Belfast Giants and also the DOPS bans that were handed out to Cody, Brookwell and Colby, Cohen. Later on, we'll be answering some of your Ask CWTV questions, some crackers this week. And we will also be looking ahead to Panthers against Sheffield this coming weekend, part 3796 of the rivalry this season. But first, let's get the boys in. It's time to welcome my comrades in arms for the Cats Whiskers podcast. So say good evening to Aaron Lord and Andy Haywood.
Evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, guys. Right, well, not the best weekend for the Panthers. A 5-2 defeat in Hull on Sunday and a 4-2 defeat in Sheffield on Saturday. Aaron, I'll come to you first, as you was in Sheffield and I watched on the webcast. You know, your overall impressions of that game.
Well, obviously, you know, with us going in short-handed, with obviously Colby Cohen's suspension didn't help us, so we were going in there with, I believe, 14 skaters.
Yeah, it was 14 skaters.
You know, which is always tough, and especially against obviously your closest rivals and the Steelers, who have been on an increase in their performance and results, was tough. But I thought we matched them pretty fairly, and the disappointing thing was our discipline. And one thing that I've said before about this Panthers team is that, you know, we've kind of played smart hockey pretty much, you know, most of the season, and we just didn't play smart hockey on Saturday night. You know, as I say, we went in there short benched and we didn't control our emotions, and that led to, you know, several penalty kills, 10 in fact, and you can't be killing, you know, 10 penalties against the Steelers when you've only got 14 skaters. Something's going to give, and especially when they were a couple of 5-on-3s, you know, we got punished. But one thing that I would say is, you know, it did. When you look at the scoreline, it was a 1-goal game realistically. I thought it was a good goal by Jacina to open the scoring, and that kind of gave us a foundation. But then the Steelers got straight back in it with a good goal, to be fair. You know, Ben O'Connor sort of penetrates our defence, and, you know, Jeff Legui's just there.
Yeah, he wasn't going to miss from there, was he?
Well, it's Jeff Legui, isn't it? You know, it doesn't matter whether he's been out of, you know, action with the Steel Dogs for earlier on in the season, but when he's, you know, a couple of feet from goal with an open goal, sort of, he's not going to miss. So that kind of put us on the back foot when really we could have done with kind of keeping that lead for a little bit longer. But I think overall it was our discipline that let us down on the night. And if you were looking for positives, then, you know, it would be the fact that they scored 2 5-on-3s and an empty netter. But the final thing that I would say on Sheffield is one thing that was very much, you know, highlighted was our power play. You know, we are missing, well, a whole power play line pretty much, you know, with Graham, Clark, Stevie Lee, Cody Wild and Cohen now. That is a whole power play line that you could potentially put out there as a first power play. And that was just so obvious that, you know, we didn't really have anybody on the point that gave us that threat, really. You know, obviously Mosey was there, you know, Schmidt was there at times, but when you look at the losses that we've had with Cody Wild being out and Cohen being out for that game, it really did kind of, it was quite obvious that we were struggling in that area. And to say, you know, we had 7 power plays, but we converted from 1. That was kind of highlighted for me.
I mean, I from watching the webcast, there was a couple of things that sort of came out that, yes, there was a lot of penalties, and we had 26 penalty minutes compared to 20 for Sheffield. But I thought a lot of the penalties called were quite soft. I think in some games a lot of those actually wouldn't have been called. So there was that. But the other thing that sort of struck me is we were quite short benched, and it was obvious as the match went on we was getting tighter and tighter, and I think that showed in the third period. We were chasing the game. Steelers still outshot us 11 shots to 7, but for me, Sheffield just really don't look that special. They don't look the team they looked earlier in the season when they had their first line of Forney, Fretter and Wire absolutely firing on all cylinders. They look like they are struggling somewhat. Andy, is that something that you agree with?
Well, I certainly agree that they perhaps don't seem to be firing on all cylinders like they certainly had been. But by the same token, if they're still winning games, they're still picking up points, they're still keeping that pressure on Brayhead if there is a slip up. So I certainly, it's one of them things. I go into Sheffield games this season, and with the way that we have played in them, and the team that Sheffield have got, I feel relatively confident with each game that we play pre-game. I mean, obviously, you aren't going to win every single one in a season. Don't get me wrong; that'd be quite a feat. But they don't scare me. And to be honest, I don't think there is. I don't think they've got the depth. I think that's why you kind of feel that way, Jono. Perhaps is because of the seeming lack of depth. I think. Apart from Ben O'Connor, who is one of the premier British defencemen, I think. Realistically, Dow's not had a great season.
He's not, and he was someone I actually wanted to draw out, because I remember when he played for Belfast a few seasons ago, and he was clearly probably the best player in the league. Yeah. He had an outstanding season. He went to Sweden for a year. He's come back, and last season he was okay, but this season he just seems anonymous. And I just think, this was such a good player. He's called the golden child, but he just seems to have been pulled into that sort of average British player pack.
Yeah, I mean that was going to be the point I made was bar sort of O'Connor and Dowd because of Dowd's age. They've got an aging Brit pack that realistically the type of players they are, they I think that's where they lack this season especially. It's like you look at the comparative ages of Panthers players and stuff, they are younger. But by the same token, the older guy is someone like David Clark, who you will, if fully fit for the whole season, you would still expect to score, 30, 40 goals. You would expect Dow to get that, but he's not really done it this season. But other than that, the rest of their Brit pack, they seem a little light. I mean, Thomas has hardly iced through half of the season. Got from when we played them earlier on in the season, got very limited ice time. And it's things like that I think is where they lack compared to some of the other teams. I certainly think that Belfast and ourselves and Cardiff are another one who have all got a superior Brit pack. And obviously, Brayhead are coping well with their Brits. And I think they made a couple of shrewd British signings as well, Brayhead, up there. But I personally, I don't think Sheffield are a bad team. I don't think they're perhaps as good as some people were expecting. I think that's the best way to put it. They are still a decent hockey team, and they will still get results. They're second in the league, so they're not that bad. But I just think the depth of the team after that first line is what's lacking for them.
Aaron, just to talk about the Panthers again, and then we'll probably move into Sunday's game against Hull. One of the things that probably hurt us on Saturday night was a lack of bench strength. We were still able to ice 11 imports, which is fine, and obviously Colby Cohen was suspended. Sunday we was able to ice the full complement of 12 imports once again, which is great. But I think the thing is for us is the key players that are out, like David Clark, like Steve Lee, and I suppose even Ollie Betteridge, who can't come in now because he's got a broken kneecap. When you get an injury to a British player, it does hurt the team more because you lose that depth.
You do. Any Brit, whether they are a high end Brit or a young Brit like an Ollie Betteridge, they're irreplaceable. You can replace imports, but to replace a Brit is near on impossible, and that can make a massive difference. Yes, we were able to ice our imports, like you said, to the quota that we were allowed on Sheffield and to the full quota on Sunday. But your Brits make up your roster, and when you could maybe get away with one, but when you're starting to lose a David Clark and a Stevie Lee for us, it's very difficult and it puts extra strain on the roster. And if you took that into consideration for Sheffield, if they lost Ben O'Connor and lost Robert Dowd, then I'm pretty sure that a lot of Steelers would say that their team would suffer. Just as if you would go for Belfast quickly, take Davy Phillips out and take, Craig Peacock or Colin Shields, then again, their fans would say that they will suffer. And that's just something that, us Panthers have to put up with. It's the cards that have been dealt, and we have to carry on and deal with it. But yes, it has a massive effect.
We'll move on to Sunday, but just quickly before I do, there was one tweet that I did see from Kim Williams, who most know as Kim the Panther, and she said it was our first bad weekend since Christmas. And she made an absolutely great point, to be honest. It's our first bad weekend since Christmas, so things aren't all bad, I don't think.
No, I mean, for me, just it's the initial reaction, isn't it? We went to Hull on Sunday, and obviously I went to Sheffield on Saturday. So it's your initial reaction, the fact that you're getting tweets or people are saying a 0-point weekend. It's that initial reaction. But when you get home or the day after and you actually sit down and realise that the run that we've been on since Christmas, it could be a hell of a lot worse. Let's be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to Sunday night and the trip, and we always say it every time that we play there, it's never an easy trip to the most versatile venue, and it certainly wasn't on Sunday night. A 5-2 defeat, even though Panthers did outshoot the Stingrays 50 shots to 38, including 24 shots in what was a very one-sided first period. But Aaron, we just couldn't score apart from Chris Higgins.
Do you know what? Starting from the first minute, I thought the fans were fantastic, and I thought that brought such a big atmosphere, because I think there was possibly at the start, as many Panthers fans as there were Hull fans, pretty much, and I think that obviously, it made its way onto the ice, because I don't think I've ever seen a opening period where the Panthers have dominated so much in the amount of shots that we've had on goal. And I would say possibly 75% to 80%, their keeper Brown has kept them in that first period and kept them in the game, because we were peppering him with so many shots, and there were a few, opportunities where we should have really scored. Because either Brown was out of his net or he wasn't in the correct position, and we just couldn't put it in the onion bag, to say. But and I honestly think that came back to haunt us, because I think we could have won that game in that first period. I honestly believe that, and obviously Lacko has a penalty shot that he doesn't score, and it kind of had that feeling that, do you know what, we've been that dominant in that first period that we've got to come back out in the second and carry that on. And to be fair to Hull, they shut us down. They kind of stopped our momentum and our rhythm. And then I think from there, they grew in confidence, and I think we struggled to adapt to the game and the fact that we were creating so many chances in the first period, and at the end of the day, Hull ran away with it, and it just kind of summed up the weekend for me that we had such a strong first period, and in hockey, in any sport, it's fine margins. You know, a couple of those shots going in the first period, and it could have been a hell of a different game. But to be fair to Hull, they hung on in that first period, going in 1-1, and they grew in confidence.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was speaking to Jonathan Fernley, I had a quick chat with him in the first interval, and I was saying how good I thought Brown had played, considering the amount of shots we'd had on them. And he actually said that the defence have actually worked him out and are now working with him. He says Brown was making the save and then the defence was clearing, which if you think back to it, it was actually true. The defence was mopping up a lot of his rebounds, and not allowing Panthers to have like that second bite of the cherry from the rebound. So it was in effect, even though they allowed 24 shots, it was probably still quite a good defensive performance to keep clearing the net.
Yeah, true.
Andy, I'll come to you about the Stingrays. They're a team that I think have been pretty much underrated throughout the season. I think prior to the season starting, they was written off in a lot of quarters because we'd not heard of a lot of their players. They were signing a lot of youngsters, a lot of kids fresh out of college. But to be fair to Omar Pasha, he's built an excellent side there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they've certainly shocked quite a few people. Not more so than us at the weekend, I suppose. But
well, of course, they had that 6-1 victory down at the NIC earlier in the season as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually think that they've probably got a far better team than they've had for a few years. They might not have the big star players that they've been associated with in the past, like your Silver Fawns or your Jeremy Tendlers, obviously. But I think that they've found a really good formula this year. They've obviously lost Ben Bounds to Cardiff, so they've had to go for a completely new approach because they've the past few years they've relied on having that extra import skater with Bounds in net. So obviously they've had to go down a different route. They've changed their style of play quite significantly, I think, with the way that Cloutier used to coach and the way that Pasha coaches, and I think they're a bit more free. They're a bit more. They seem a little bit more creative to me, and they've got a really good team. And again, on their day they'll beat anyone. And obviously when it comes to playoff times, there won't be any easy games. But I certainly think that Hull do have a capability to throw a surprise. And possibly make the Final Four again, like they did a few years ago. But I just think that especially at home, they're going to fancy their chances to get high up that league table, sort of as high as they can go. And I actually think that they'll be ahead of Fife and Coventry come the end of the season.
I mean, when you look at some of the results they've had, I mean, they beat Belfast home and away, they've beaten us home and away, they had a win in Braehead recently. You know, they're certainly not the sort of bottom dwelling pushovers that everybody thought there was going to be at the start of the season. They're serious, and they could actually have a big say on where the league title goes, Aaron.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think I believe it's Braehead. I think they've got them three. No, sorry, I've got that completely wrong. It's actually Coventry that's playing them 3 times in the last 4 games or something. But they'll have a big say because they've got to face the teams, that are challenging for the title. We've got to play them one more time at home. And they're tricky. They have got some good skaters, as Andy says, and they've also got speed and they've got trickery up front, and that's always a threat. So they're going to have a big say in the title, and they're going to, I wouldn't like to face them in the playoffs. I really wouldn't. I don't think we will, but because I think they'll finish sixth. I won't say where we'll finish, but yeah, look, they're a dangerous side on their day.
Very much so. Because another thing that I do want to bring up is sort of probably the turning point of the actual game, where Panthers were 2-1 up, and a defensive mistake that was sort of engineered by Colby, Cohen and Sam Oakford, where the puck came right in front for Eric Galbraith, who absolutely buried the shot into that. I mean, he didn't mess about with that one. It almost broke the net. But I mean, I think the game turned from that point, and there was only ever going to be one winner after that.
I think it's because, again, it was a time where we needed to get a stranglehold on the game, and we just needed to see that period out, or see that period of pressure out, because they were putting us under pressure. And look, Cohen could have cleared the puck and cleared the zone on his own, but he makes his pass to Oakford, and Oakford doesn't clear the zone, and it comes straight out to Galbraith, and like you say, he absolutely buries it. And I think when we look at Panthers season, clearing our zone is something that a lot of Panthers fans will tell you we haven't been good at, and that was another example of it. And sadly, I agree with you, it kind of gave Hull the momentum, and it was a quick shift to the Stingrays, and they're the small margins, and they're the plays where, for me, just clear the puck, clear it. If it means icing, I don't care. Take a breather, get that, settle yourself down again. Let's set ourselves up. But like I say, most Panthers fans will tell you that we've not cleared the zone quick enough or good enough this season.
So, again, another defeat for Panthers, a 5-2 victory for the Hull Stingrays, very well deserved, and a 0-point weekend for Panthers. So where that leaves the league table, well, Braehead still top, 57 points. Sheffield, 54 points. Panthers also on 54 points. Belfast 52, Cardiff 51, so still very close amongst the top five. A couple of the results that I do want to pick out from the weekend is obviously Braehead's 1-0 victory against Belfast on Saturday. Andy, that was a big result for them.
Yeah, absolutely. That, to me, signals realistically the end of Belfast's title race, in my opinion. Obviously, there's still a lot of hockey to go, and anything can happen. But I feel that Belfast would have needed to get that victory over Braehead to signal any real dangerous intent. Just the sheer, I mean, it sounded from everything I read on Twitter, it sounded like your typical, almost like playoff semi-final game. It was 1-0. There was, fantastic defence and goalkeeping, obviously, all round, and the teams were really playing like they needed to win. And it's a great sign for Braehead fans, because obviously there's been all this talk about, they've never been here before. Will they have the mental strength, or will they bottle it and stuff like that? And I think they've proved and they've shown that with this result that they're up for the task, and it's going to be extremely difficult for teams to catch them. But that is a really big result for Braehead, and certainly, in my opinion, a real killer blow for Belfast.
Now on Sunday night, the live Premier Sports game, Aaron, Cardiff giving the nothing special Sheffield Steelers a bit of a thrashing 4-0. As we was in Hull, we haven't been able to see it, but have we seen it? I'm sure we'd have enjoyed that one.
I'm sure we would have, yeah. Although I wouldn't watch a Cardiff Steelers game, to be honest, even though I have Premier Sports.
Even though the coach was presenting?
Who?
Even though the coach was presenting?
No. Too much tan for me. Anyway, let's move on. Look, I think, obviously the Steelers gave Cardiff a bit of a lesson not that long ago, and Cardiff wanted revenge, and they got it. So I wasn't expecting that game to be kind of that free-flowing goal scoring, to be honest, from either team or one team. But what can you say about Cardiff that you haven't already said on many forums, many podcasts? Going to Cardiff will always be difficult for the rest of the season. They have the ability to shut you out in bounds. They have the threat of scoring goals. So it shouldn't really be that much of a surprise to a certain degree, and it's a fantastic result for them because they needed that. Look, they're in the Belfast kind of situation of they can't afford really to lose many more games, and especially against another rival. So it was a big result for them.
Okay, moving on to look at some other talking points from the week. Obviously, last week we talked at length and we had a special podcast about the incident between Colby, Cohen and Cody Brookwell in the Panthers Giants game that took place on the Sunday. DOPS giving their verdict on Friday just passed, and both very surprisingly, only getting a one-game ban. Andy, I'll come to you first. So, do you think both have got away with that?
Oh, yeah, and then some. To be honest, I think it's shambolic that they've only got one game. It's the best way to sum it up. It really does send a personally quite a scary message that kicking a guy's in the kneecap is not good. You'll get a one game ban, but But one game is nothing when you compare it to some of the other stuff. Obviously, it always gets mentioned, but the water bottle toss.
Omar Pasha's water bottle toss.
That gets 2 games for throwing a bottle of water onto the ice, and then kicking a player. Kicking a player has got 1 game. Is absolutely staggering. And that to me. Personally, and I put it on Twitter when it first broke. As a Panthers fan, I'm ecstatic.
I'm delighted.
Cohen's only got 1 game because since he's come back, he has, from what I've seen, he's been one of the best players we've had. So for him to only get 1 game ban is brilliant as a Panthers fan. But it doesn't change my view on the fact that he has only got 1 game. I think it's absolutely shocking on the Department of Player Safety because it's a horrible play. It's a real dangerous, nasty thing, and I don't really want to see him do it again or anyone do it again. With that in mind, obviously Brookwell has done what he's done and got a game for it as well, and he's extremely lucky because again that's a real dirty play. Yes, you can argue that it's in retaliation for what Cohen's done, but by the same token, it is still a dirty play, and it's one that it isn't very nice. But again, like I say, just to go over the same point, it just absolutely baffled me the decision as to only giving both players 1 game.
I mean, Aaron, I was thinking that maybe 5 for Cohen. Probably 3 or 4 for Brookwell, because what Brookwell did was pretty dangerous as well, and I know it was in retaliation to what Cohen did, but he still speared him in the midriff, which is an unprotected part of the body. I say, and like Andy just says, I was completely gobsmacked. I just couldn't believe it, and I knew that they would be. Well, I knew Twitter would melt down, which it did, but to be honest, rightly so, because a lot of people were disgusted by that decision, and I, to be honest, I can't blame him. I can't put up any defence. I said on Twitter, I've defended DOPS. I think it's been a real step forward for the Elite League this season, but I cannot defend that decision because it is diabolical.
Well, like you said, we obviously chatted about this before Dops made their decision with the coach, and we were all in agreement that, you look at Cohen's and it's not nice to see. You look at Brookwell's, it's not nice to see. Two wrongs don't make a right. So, from Brookwell's point of view, it doesn't make it right just because obviously what Cohen did. And I don't, I said at the time, and I did a tweet. Obviously, our friends at A View from the Bridge did a whole debate on Dops, and you could either vote Coach, who was kind of pro Dops, or you could vote Davey, who was against Dops. And for me, Dops have really made a big error there. They've kind of undone a lot of the good work that they've done this season. And I just think it's a bit, it's one game for you, one game for you. Let's just kind of push it under the carpet, and we're on holiday, so we'll move on quickly. Very poor. Yes, Panthers will benefit, and so will Belfast, or they have done. But I just think Dops, at the end of the day, have let themselves down.
Another big piece of news that came out on Tuesday evening, and that is that Nathan Robinson, the former Panther, has moved to the Belfast Giants. Now, this caused a lot of debate on Twitter, and I personally think, well done, good luck to the guy. I know other people don't necessarily feel the same way. I personally think cracking signing for Belfast, but Andy, I'll come to you first. Good signing for Belfast.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The guy was pure class. Fantastic talent, and a great hockey player. So, yeah, absolutely. It's a brilliant signing for Belfast.
And Aaron, obviously there was what Robinson said to the Evening Post quite recently about how, he felt that the league was dangerous, and then he comes back and signs in the Elite League. So,
yep.
So your thoughts on that?
Right, where do I stand on this? I'll try and make it as quick as kind of possible.
Settle in, folks. This could be a long one.
Look, I don't really have a massive issue with him signing for Belfast. I'm pretty sure we had an option of possibly signing him earlier on in the season, but for one reason or another, we didn't. We then brought in other players that have overall made our roster far stronger. Nathan Robinson is a fantastic player, but what grates on me is the article in the Nottingham Post. He stated that is, one of the reasons why he wants to go back to Europe or go to, finish the unfinished business that he has in the DEL, and that, maybe in a few years' time when he's a little bit older, and if the league can, kind of get rid of these players that cause the nasty hits and the dangerous hits, then it'll be in a better place. And then, he's out of the game for 3 months or nearly 3 months, and he's suddenly back in this league that he said was a dangerous league. That kind of grates on me, because I'd rather just a bit of honesty. And people will say, I'm sure the argument will be, well, he's got to earn a living somewhere. He's got to earn a living. He wants to play hockey. But this is Nathan Robinson, who's had a successful career in DEL. He's had a successful, career around Europe. He did all right. He did well when he was at the Panthers. Probably one of the best players on our roster at the start of the season. So why the 3 months out? Why that? And why then come back to a league that you stated in a local newspaper was dangerous and could seriously hurt other players?
You see, I don't particularly mind that so much. I mean, I think, yes, he said what he said in the press, and it could be seen as a tad hypocritical that he now comes back into the same league. However, you know, like you say, he was out for 3 months. I'm sure he was trying to get a job in Europe. He couldn't. And when it comes to putting food on the table, sometimes you just have to swallow your pride and do what's best for you and what's best for your family. I mean, I've seen hockey players say things before. Scott Allison said he would never play for Nottingham. Guess what? He ended up in Nottingham. To give a football comparison, I remember Roy Keane, when he was at Forest, saying, "Oh, Nottingham is the city of my heart. I don't want to leave." And 2 months later, he'd signed for Manchester United. No, I haven't forgotten. And it's things like sports people do say these things, and it does come back to bite them on the arse a lot of the time. Yeah, I personally don't have an issue with it.
Right. With all due respect, though, Jono, you mentioned Roy Keane. That's saying a club is in your heart and all that lot. That's tosh. We all know loyalty in sport has gone down the old Swanee River. It ain't happening anymore. But you're stating that this league is dangerous. And you're saying that there is not another club. With all due respect to the elite league, we're not. We're doing some good stuff, and we're working our way up to be, a decent league. But there's better leagues out there across Europe, and you're saying that a player of Nathan Robinson's quality cannot or should not have another offer from another club in Europe. Well, you can say you put food on the table, but Europe's quite big when it comes to hockey.
You're right, but a lot of clubs are settled. We're coming up to the deadline. I mean, the deadline is what, next week, 15th. He's probably running out of options. If Belfast is the only option on the table for him, what are you going to do?
Well, I think Andy, because I think Andy's got a question regarding this, but I'll say it so Andy can carry on, and give his view. But why is that then? Why is Belfast Nathan Robinson's only option or best option?
Andy.
Well, yeah, I was extremely surprised when he left Nottingham and it was announced that he wouldn't be coming back. I said I would be extremely surprised if we saw him on these shores again because he was that good. The longer that he went without a team, I kind of felt the better chance that we had of signing him back. Because, like you say, these guys need to pay bills, they need to, pay for their life and things like that. And with that in mind, I half expected that, when it got to, desperate times and stuff like that, that his offers might have reduced. But with that in mind, if his own expectations are being reduced because of the time of year it is, and he needs to, because he's also got to think about next season as well. If he's had, 8 months off playing hockey, he's got to think about next season as much as just the end of this season. So he needed to find a team. Obviously, if he's reduced his expectations of what he wanted based on that, it does beg the question why the Elite League, not necessarily why Belfast, because at the end of the day they're a good team. They've got decent financial clout. They've got some very good players that he's played with and against in the past and things like that. So I've got no problem with him signing with Belfast. It just seems strange that he's signed in the Elite League full stop. Because I think, like I said, as much as the longer it went on without a team, I thought he might come back. That was the part of me that thought, he said how much he enjoyed Nottingham. He was impressed with how the fans took to him with everything with regards, liking him as a hockey player, going to these art things that he did, that he put on, trying to help out when his bike got stolen and stuff. He seemed genuinely, happy and grateful for the support. So I kind of thought that, if it went on, he might come back. But by the same token, there's got to be a DEL or even DEL2 team or anything like that would have wanted him. And it just seems a touch bizarre that he is back in the Elite League. Having said that, it's great for the Elite League because he's a fantastic talent and a joy to watch. But I kind of agree with Aaron's point on the whole, the hypocrisy of it. I'm not naive enough to think that sports people aren't hypocritical. In any sport, they say things one week and then the next week it's on your fish and chips wrappings. But I don't know, with what he said, and like Aaron said, everything about there's players in this league that are out to hurt you and will go with the intent to injure you and stuff, and it's dangerous, and I might come back at one point, but it won't be this season. And then to sign, it does smack. It does hurt a bit, to be fair, especially considering it's not us. But like on the flip side, I can completely agree with you, Jono, in the sense that this guy needs to pay bills, and like I said, more importantly, he needs to try and work out what his whole life is. At his age, he can't be seen to be having too long out of the game because coaches will look at it and say, "Well, why didn't you play that year? Let's not sign him next year." And he's got to look at that side of things as well. So it's a tough one. Then it's always going to create debate because of the nature of it. But at the end of the day, it's good to have these type of topics because it means that we can sit here on a Wednesday evening and talk about it.
Just to wrap this one up very quickly, one of the other things I noticed was a lot of opposing fans to the Panthers, and some of the Panthers fans were saying, "Oh, this is a big middle finger to the Panthers." Why? He's not played for us for 3 months. He's not our player, so how on earth is it a middle finger to us? And the other point that I wanted to make, and it was a point I made on Twitter yesterday, was, okay, we haven't re-signed him. I would love to have re-signed him, of course I would. But if allegedly what he was asking for has meant we have since been able to sign Modig for the season, bring in Guillaume Doucet, and also bring in Colby Cohen, then frankly, I think we've done better out of it.
Yep, I think that's a very good point. One player doesn't make a team, and there's no doubt that Nathan Robinson will make Belfast stronger. But I think we got what we needed, in somebody like Doucet, strengthened with Cohen, and obviously, Modig backing up Kwal when he was injured and being that backup, and challenging for the netminder spot. But when you look at, just very, very quickly, just, looking at Robinson's stats, when you compare him to somebody like Higgins, and somebody like Doucet for us, Robinson actually comes up as, less than a point a game for his time when he was with the Panthers, and Higgins and, Doucet are going at more than a point a game. It's very slight margins, so, does it back it up in the sense of what you've just said there, Jono, that we're better off with the signings that we made than just keeping Nathan Robinson?
But I think the conclusion is that Belfast have got themselves an excellent player, and I'm sure he will improve their team.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
We're going to answer some of your Ask CWTV questions now. Once again, thanks very much for sending them in. If you want to send them in to us at any time, you can do so via Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @CatsWhiskersTV, and use the hashtag AskCWTV. So, quite a mix of questions that we've got this week, and we'll start off with Andy, your Panthers Hockey Live colleague, Antoine Marie-Jean, good friend of the show. He says, with the positive effect that Hull fans had last week on sorting out some of their rink problems, Do we think there's potential for supporters' trust to be formed and invest in clubs similar to what happens in football? Andy, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's certainly a scope. It's hard because you've got to judge whether the fans want to be involved ultimately. That'll be the main thing, is whether ultimately the clubs won't want to do it as such because they're happy running things the way they want to run them. But if there is enough noise made by the fans, then ultimately they are going to have to listen. And obviously, the more noise there is, the better the better chance of being listened to is going to happen. I mean, we've only got to look at some of the things on social media and forums and stuff from a Panthers point of view to see that it does work. Obviously, not quite to the same degree as what's happened in Hull, but things like small things like the match night presentation with music. For years people have been saying that it's not been good and it's been dull and it's been the same for so long and things, and eventually it's probably taken a bit longer than people would have liked, but eventually they've listened and they're starting to do things now which are making the fans happy. With the whole things like that. So there's certainly scope, but I think a lot depends on the involvement of the fans themselves. They've got to want to not necessarily campaign, but they've got to have the initial push and forefront for the idea.
Aaron, you got anything to add to that?
No, I suppose the only thing that I would really say is that it's a good idea in certain circumstances, but I'm not sure really the Elite League and clubs within the Elite League are at the right kind of stage or level. I don't think it would work at this precise moment in time.
So, moving on to the next question, who comes from Al Wilson, who is a Braehead Clan fan. He's asking if Nielsen regrets his easy conference quote.
No.
Simple as that, no.
No, I don't think it does. It's one of the things, I think realistically, regardless of the way it comes across and the whole, the reputation of Corey that he has amongst the other teams as well, I think realistically not many people will disagree with it. It's just that because of the results, especially relatively soon after he initially said it, and then obviously this weekend just passed, it's always going to get mocked and laughed at because, we've this so-called easy group that Braehead are in, we've struggled to pick up points from. But no, I think ultimately deep down he won't regret it. It might have made him look silly at times, but then by the same token, there's other times when he's looked like a genius. So, swings and roundabouts, isn't it, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he regrets it for a second, personally. But, I suppose that from making the quote and then seeing the results we're having against the Gardner teams, it's always going to be brought up, and let's face it, fans will look for any stick to beat us with, won't they?
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. And we got a question from Paul Carruthers, who most people will know as Scooby, the announcer at Hull Stingrays. Really good bloke. He says, does buying expensive players really make a big difference if the balance of the team suffers because of it? And he also sort of points out teams that have spent money on cheaper players often have a good balance. I think that's a really, really good question.
Yeah, so do I. Just to start on it, I think the way the question's worded, it gives an easy answer. Does buying expensive players, benefit teams if it's gonna, imbalance the team? No, not at all. They've got to be able to balance out with the rest of the squad. It's all well and good having the best player in the league, or having a fantastic goal scorer, or the best playmaker, or something like that. But you've only got to look at the stats at the end of the season. For instance, you look at the amount of times that a team like Hull themselves, where they've had like a Jeremy Tendler, who's been top of the goal scoring league, but the rest of the team, yes, they've done well on the budget that they've had, but realistically, would they rather have the top goal scorer or a trophy? Look at the time when we had Jade Galbraith and stuff like that. The guy would get 100 points, but we didn't get that thing that we so desired. Ryan Ginand at Coventry, again, ridiculous goal-scoring tally, but nothing else really to show for it. And it is these things. You've got to be very careful because you've got to sign good players, and obviously if you can sign the best player, then you've got a very good chance of winning games. But you've got to sign the best team to withstand a real challenge to win trophies, and that's something that is a hell of a lot more difficult than people seemingly would like to think. You've only got to look at our poor record in the league campaign in comparison. We've had some of the best players on paper, but it's probably been at a detriment to the team, because we've not had a decent balance, and with that we've then not won things, or not even challenged some years. So I agree with what Scooby said. You need a balance in your team. You need stars, but by the same token, you need to balance them stars out with guys that are going to do the dirty work for them. They're going to get their nose dirty. They're going to go in the corners. They're going to battle. They're going to work their tail off night in, night out, so that when these superstars have their off days, they're still getting results because the grinders and the grafters are doing their job.
Aaron, you said all season that this is probably the most complete Panthers team that you've seen, so I'm sure you quite agree with what Scooby's trying to say.
I don't think I've said that this is the most complete Panthers team I've ever seen. What I've said from the word off is that we have a team, and by that I mean it's a real team ethic. You could say that we don't really have any superstars as such. Obviously, we have a player like Chris Higgins who lit up the Elite League last season, but the one thing that I would always prefer is a group of players that are prepared to work as a team than a group of individuals. Now, I'm not a hockey coach, but I think what most coaches would tell you, that the hardest part of their recruitment is trying to get the right players to gel with everybody else on the roster. That is something that we had when we won the Grand Slam, and I think that's something that we've got this season. I've been lucky enough to be in the locker room on an occasion, and it really felt like we had a team, everybody getting on, and I think you've seen that in some of the performances that we've had this season. And for me, I would much rather have a balanced team than certain stars or whatever that could disrupt. Over a 52 game season league campaign, you need a team. Individuals will not win you a league title. They might win you a cup, but they will not win you a league title.
Final question comes from Mark Hitchcock, who everyone knows as Hitchy, sometimes substitute host of A View from the Bridge.
Part-time Belfast Giant.
That's the fella, pretends to be a Sheffield Steeler, but we all know he's a Giant at heart. He asks, Final Four for the playoffs, who do we think it's going to be right now? So I know you guys have been mulling over this all day, so Aaron, go on, you go first.
Braehead, Panthers, Steelers, Cardiff.
No Belfast then?
No Belfast.
Okay, Andy?
Exactly the same.
Exactly the same. And let's make that a hat-trick, because I agree with you as well. Let's expand it out a little bit. So what do we think the matchups are going to be? Because at the moment, if you look at the league standings and conference standings as they are currently, Braehead will be playing Coventry, Panthers will be playing Hull, Steelers will be playing Fife, and Giants will be playing Devils. So I think you guys have got it swapped over a little bit.
I've got it pretty much bang on, to be fair. The only thing I've got slightly different is I've got Nottingham to play Fife again and Coventry to play Braehead.
Yeah. Aaron?
I thought that was different, Andy, because you said that we're going to win the league. So we'd be playing Coventry.
I said blind
faith.
blind optimism and faith.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
And fan bias was going to win us the league. Realistically, I don't think so.
Okay, I'm pretty much with Andy. I think Braehead will play Coventry. I think we will play Fife. I think Steelers will play Hull. And I think Cardiff and Belfast will battle it out with Cardiff coming out on top.
I slightly disagree. I think Braehead Coventry. I think Panthers will play Hull, and I think Sheffield will play Fife. But also, I think Belfast Cardiff. So we're all saying if it's Belfast Cardiff, we're expecting a Cardiff victory.
Yeah. Just very quickly though on that, Jono. Why do you think we will play Hull? Why do you think Hull will finish 7th and Fife 6th? Because if you look at the league table at the moment, Hull have 5 games in hand on Fife, and they're only 3 points behind them. And currently, as we record this, Hull are beating Braehead. So,
that puts us back in the title picture. Then.
Well, from what we saw on Sunday, earlier on we've said how good Hull are. Are Fife really better than Hull this season? I don't think over the remainder of the season they are.
You're probably right. I just think. I mean, I'm asking to predict something like 10 games before it actually happens. So.
Well, you asked us the question.
Yeah. Well, no, Hitchy asked us the question. To be fair, but
yeah, you giant Hitchy.
But I just took the easy option and picked it as it is now. If I'm honest.
Your in-depth question.
In-depth research here on the Cats Whiskers
homework
podcast.
in a week to see who would finish where.
Yeah,
John, I've just gone with the league as it is.
Yeah,
but I research Bullard.
Yeah, but when I'm at work, I have to do work. So.
Wow.
Shall we look forward to the?
I think we better. Yeah, of course. Only one game for the Nottingham Panthers this weekend. A 7 p.m. face-off on Saturday night against the Sheffield Steelers again. How refreshing! So a big game, and as we are talking now, Sheffield are currently 5-2 up against the Edinburgh Capitals in the league game. Braehead currently losing 2-1 at home to the Hull Stingrays. If the results stay like that, that will see Steelers go on to 56 points, just a point behind Braehead. But Panthers, of course, on 54 points. So it's likely that Sheffield are going to win this game against Edinburgh, so I think it's imperative that Panthers win on Saturday night.
I think they will. I think at home, especially, the crowd, the occasion, to be fair, almost for desperation as well that we've got. I think we'll do it.
Are you as confident, Aaron?
Yeah, I think we will win. I think it'll be a tight game. I think obviously it looks like we'll have Bruce Graham back on the ice, which will.
I'm seeing two players back mentioned. So.
Oh really?
So you're saying Graham, but of course we've got 12 imports, so you're going to have to drop imports to bring other imports in. I am hoping that one of them might be Stevie Lee. I'm not sure, but just a hunch, just a feeling I've got, which will certainly add some depth.
Oh, most definitely. As we were talking about the Brits earlier on, I mean that's fantastic if he is able to get back on the ice. I just think a bit like what Andy said. The desperation. It's not desperate times at the moment. There is still a lot of hockey to play, but we are coming to the crux of it. Unfortunately, with the weekend that we've just had, you will read and hear and people say a must-win game, but for the last 3 weeks, or probably since Christmas, we've had must-win games, and I just think the home advantage. I think the fact that it is a sellout. I think obviously Paws has had a spray tan. Ken,
another thing I will point out
is going to come back.
Oh God, yes, of course. Ken's back, which is
it's
a massive
all destined
relief.
to be a good night for the Panthers Nation, and I just think the crowd will play a massive part in it. I think we really need to make the world famous Capital FM Arena a fortress on Saturday night. And we've got it. And you said earlier on, Jono, that this Steelers team isn't anything special. And I think, yes, we lost against them last Saturday, but that was down to 5-on-3s and an empty netter. We've got to keep our discipline. We've got to play, with a bit of passion and actually, control the game, and that's discipline. And it's, making sure that we take the chances when we get them.
Well, the Steelers haven't actually won a game at the NIC this season so far, and I'll be honest, I don't see that record changing at all on Saturday. I'm pretty confident of a victory, as it seems you two guys are as well.
Yeah, well, I'm going to it with confidence. I think if it was in different circumstances and stuff, then maybe. But even like I've just mentioned, going there on last Saturday and losing the game, there were so many factors as to why we lost that game. And I just think if we play smart, we keep our discipline, like I said, I think we can match the Steelers and get the 2 points, no problem.
Okay, Andy, anything more to add?
No, I've said my bit.
Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of another show, and of course we will be looking back on the Panthers Steelers game in next week's show, and hopefully we will have a guest to join us as well. So tune in to see who it might be. But all that remains is to say thank you to you guys for joining me once again.
Absolute pleasure, boys.
Anytime, as always.
All right. And thank you very much for listening to us, and we will see you next week.